Okay, final statistics project number 2, instructions. The statistics final project makes up 10% of the final course grade for Math 14, Statistical Methods. The purpose of the project is to give you hands-on statistical research experience where you work with real data that you have collected. Your final project will be done with PowerPoint presentation slides, backing with graphs, text, and perhaps some photos and/or other visual media attached. Project guidelines. The project has several components. Number 1, forming a research question and stating the question as a claim to be analyzed with a hypothesis test. Number 2, you're collecting the appropriate data and presenting it graphically. Number 3, calculating the various descriptive statistics necessary to describe the data and using them to carry out the hypothesis test. Number 4, design and presentation of your project. The component details. Number 1, the forming of your research question will be the key element that will determine what data you will collect. The hypothesis test will be created directly from your claim. Here are some examples that we've done in class of a typical form a claim can take. You have a mean value, which is mu, of a population which can be greater than, less than, or not equal to some value. The variance, or standard deviation, of a population which is greater than, less than, or not equal to some value. The proportion P of some quantity in a population is greater than, less than, or not equal to some value. The mean of a population, comparing it to another mean of a population. E, the mean of a difference of paired data. The variance of one population compared to another population variance, and the proportion of something in one population compared to another population. Now, you may only choose among A, B, D, E, and F for your project. And do not test proportions for C and G. Now note, a claim can technically contain equals. However, if a claim contains equals, a hypothesis test will never support that claim. It's best to use greater than, less than, or not equals. Then, if you reject your null hypothesis, then your claim will be supported. Number 1, collecting your data should be the fun part of the project. Your sample data must come from the measurement of something. You can't use data that you didn't measure yourself. That means data from the internet, newspapers, magazines, journals, etc. are not allowed. Your data should not be total number of some discrete quantity, for example, the number of words, the number of cars, the number of plants, etc. Most of the hypothesis tests we study require that more than 30 values must be taken in your sample. Some tests require that the data be normally distributed. Try to choose data that can be measured accurately and fairly quickly, such as length measured with a ruler or measuring tape, a weight measured with an accurate bathroom scale or postal or food scale, a time measured with a stopwatch, etc. An accurate thermometer might be employed to measure temperature. You might come up with other quantities you can measure as well. You should try to collect your data in a random way. Ideally, you'd like your data to be a simple random sample. On your PowerPoint presentation, display your data in the following ways: a table of your data values, a histogram of your data, a normal quantile plot of your data using StatCrunch or Excel, and state the descriptive statistics, meaning the mean, the sample mean, and the sample standard deviation. Now, if your hypothesis test involves comparing samples from two populations, make a table, histogram, and normal quantile plot and state the descriptive statistics for both sets of sample data. Number 2, your PowerPoint presentation should include a brief written description of your research and the equations, tables, and graphs that explain what you've done. You must include in your PowerPoint presentation your claim, your null and alternative hypothesis, a drawing of the appropriate distribution for your hypothesis test showing the tails and the critical values for a traditional hypothesis test, state the significance level. D, the equation you use for the test statistic and the test statistic's numerical value an associated p-value using technology to get the p-value, not the approximate methods using tables. E, the conclusion of a hypothesis test for the null hypothesis and your claim. Note, you may expand on this list if you wish, but the list is the bare minimum of what must be on your PowerPoint. You should type up the text and equations, Microsoft Word, as a decent equation editor. If you cannot type up the equations, then you should be written neatly. The font sizes for text and equations should be large enough to be easily readable from several feet away. You may use StackCrunch or other computer graphing applications for all graphs. Here's the criteria for grading the project. The project will be evaluated using the attached score sheet. Restrictions. As mentioned above, you may not do a hypothesis test for a proportion. B, you must get your own data. You may not use data from a website or other source, and the quantity must be measured, and not the count of some discrete quantity. C, you may not do a hypothesis test on claim involving video game scores. If you have any questions about what is required for the project, please do not hesitate to ask. You can email me at the following email address. Now below you can see what is the rubric or the scoring sheet. You should have followed the directions, the project's directions. You should have your table of data, histogram of data, normal quantile plot, your necessary descriptive statistics, claim and null and alternative hypothesis, drawing of the distribution with tails and the critical value and test statistic, the test statistic equation and value, the p-value, the conclusion for the null and the claim, and then neatness and the visual quality of a project. Now also, I will include a video of an example of the things that you need to that are required for the project.